All right, guys. Today we're going to take a look at the New World and specifically how it was settled. What were the patterns of settlement? Right up here on the screen, you can see I've got a map. This is an early map of the New World, and it doesn't look anything like the North and South America that we know today. It looks dramatically different, and the reason for that is because it was just being discovered. They were just charting things out. Now, there were a lot of different countries that were involved in that, a lot of countries exploring, but we're going to look at kind of what drove those countries. Specifically, why are people drawn to the New World? Yes, it's something new. Yes, it's an exciting discovery, but it really was more than that. And for a lot of people, we're going to look at who they were, specifically what countries they come from. We're going to look at where they settled, because each country kind of laid claim to its own part of the New World. And then we're going to look at really why they were there. The reality is this: they were there for one reason and one reason only, and all of them were there for the same reason: opportunity. There was opportunity to make money. There was opportunity to get rich. Now, that opportunity presented itself in the form of resources. And so that's what we're going to look at. Each of them are after resources, but they're after different types of resources. So the very first country that we're going to take a look at in terms of the New World settlement is Spain. And there we see the Spanish flag. And as we take a look further at them, we have to understand the resource, the reason that they were coming to the New World. It was about gold. They wanted to get rich, and gold has always had an inherent value. And there were pretty good deposits of it in parts of South America and different places like that. So the Spanish are going to come, and they're going to begin to settle in Central and South America. Right? That's where they're going to kind of really explore and dig in and begin to search. Now, in addition to the gold and where they settle, you have to understand they didn't come just looking to mine. The people who came were called conquistadors. They were explorers, but they were conquerors. And they really did exploit and conquer the local populations, the indigenous people. As I said, they created these permanent settlements. They weren't coming to mine and get what they could get and then get out. They were coming to set up permanent villages, permanent cities, as a way to manage all of their mining operations, to manage the sugarcane plantations, to manage all of the resources that were going to make them money. And so in doing so, it meant that they really had a very difficult relationship with the indigenous people. Many of the indigenous were going to catch diseases that were brought over from Europe. Many of them were going to be enslaved, and many of them were just going to be slaughtered. This was a very difficult thing. They were also involved in many cases in forced conversions to Christianity. And so we were civilizing them, so to speak. So anyway, it was really, really a very difficult situation between the Spanish and the indigenous populations. But that's what they were after. That's what they came, and that was what their intentions were. Now, there were other groups as well. We're going to see next the French, and we see the French flag there. The French were a whole different story. They settled in the area between the Appalachian Mountains and the Rocky Mountains of North America. Now, that doesn't mean it was exclusively there, but that's really where they kind of focused. And they were after, again, one thing and one thing only. That was resources, that's opportunity. But the resource they were looking for were furs. The French fur industry, the fashion industry, really drove a lot of that. They came here and they realized that this place was abundant in wildlife, particularly beaver, which was very highly sought after because of its waterproof qualities. What we're going to see is that as they settled in that Ohio and Mississippi River valleys, they came with the intention to work with the local tribes. They did not create permanent settlements. They created trading posts, and they would be empty for large parts of the year. Native Americans would work with them and gather furs and begin this relationship, very symbiotic. The Native Americans would trade furs that were, for them, very easy to come by, and they would trade for things that they couldn't get, which was manufactured goods. Think the introduction of rifles and things of that nature, or I should say muskets at that time. So the relationship was one that was built on kind of mutual need, right? Helping each other out. And the indigenous people of those areas were not terribly threatened by the French, because the French were not coming in large numbers. They weren't coming in to stay and building permanent settlements and threatening the resources into great a number. So that was the French. Of the three groups that came, the French were really the ones that were the most I guess, respectful and the least threatening, right? Now the next, boy, it gets complicated. This is the English, right? And of course we see the English flag, or the British flag, I should say. Now they are there for all of the reasons already stated. Opportunity, resources, but not one resource. Not like they were looking just for furs or just for gold. They were looking for any and all resources where they could turn a profit. That meant if they struck gold, fantastic, they were going to use it. It meant that if there were furs around for the taking and they could turn that into a profit, then so be it. It also meant that they were looking for things like timber, right, lumber, for shipbuilding, to support British industries. They were looking for things like cash crops, you name it, anything and everything where they could turn a profit. That's what they were looking to do. And so this vast, vast, wild, untamed, uncharted territory meant that there were a lot of opportunities for them. Now they're going to settle mostly on the east coast of North America, right? Virginia and New England and all the way as far south as Georgia, but really only within a few miles of the coast. It's going to be a little while before they venture further inland in any great numbers. So with that said, that's really kind of what we're looking at here. They were creating permanent settlements, much like the Spanish. And their settlements were growing. The intent was more people that come, we can support greater industry. We can support greater amounts of resources that are being harvested. That creates complications, though, because when it comes to the Native Americans, the higher the population of settlers that come in, the more stress it puts on the natural environment. And the more stress on the natural environment means more stress on the Native Americans themselves. And so what we're going to see is that the relationship with the Native Americans was very complicated, and it was always dependent upon the situation of the English. When the English were in desperate need during this starving time, when they didn't know how to survive, then they had great relationships with the Native Americans. They were dependent upon the Native Americans. Then for a while, after they got their footing under them, it was a little bit symbiotic. It was beneficial to both in many ways. But the less and less dependent the English became on the Native Americans means that the Native Americans are more and more at risk. Because when the English don't need you anymore, then all of a sudden you're just an obstacle to overcome. And so the relationship changes from the beginning as we move forward in these English settlements. Again, much like the Spanish, there were a lot of disease spread that was intentional among the Native American population. There were slaughters. There were all sorts of different things going on. Less so with the slavery than we saw with the Spanish, although that did happen as well. So again, it's complicated. Now that shows us the big three, right? Those are the big three countries. They weren't the only ones. Of course, the Portuguese settled in what is modern-day Brazil. We saw the Dutch purchase the island of Manhattan. So there were a lot of different groups that were coming, but those were the main three, right? The big ones. And their interactions with each other and their interactions with the Native Americans and the way in which they try to survive and thrive in the New World are going to set the stage for everything that follows after. So it's an important kind of foundational concept that we understand who they were, where they settled, and why they were here. I appreciate you guys watching. Catch up next time as we talk about Jamestown, and be sure to watch any of the other videos that get posted. Thanks for your time, guys.